and their time. My name is Kelsey Kennedy. I work at Cook County Higher Education in Grand Marais. My job is to provide education where you live, which these days we're taking more directly to your homes through Zoom and other opportunities. I'm just here as a support person this evening. I'll be helping with technology in the background, and I just wanted to walk through kind of what's happening on your screen right now. You're going to see that we have live transcription going on. You can move that around your screen if you want, or turn it off. That's a choice you have as well. The session is being recorded. If you are going into your breakout rooms, which we will do later, those sessions will not be recorded via Zoom. They'll just be recorded by the person that is in there as a leader. They'll be taking notes. So please know that you have some comfortability in being as anonymous as you want to be. If you have something that you want to share that you don't want to be saying out loud, or you want to keep it to yourself, but want us to know, but not exactly who you are, you can directly message the hosts and panelists, and we're happy to share that on your behalf as well. I do want to let you know we have some news individuals with attending today, and just be mindful about that, as well as just enjoying this time together as well as we brainstorm. I want to mention that you can view the screen differently depending on how you prefer to see things. If you look at your right-hand side of your screen, you're going to have a view button. If you click on that view button, you can see the person that's speaking. You can see all the faces of all the people, or you can choose to just pick the speaker. Those are your preferences. You can also see full screen or make the screen smaller based on your computer. I am one of those people that has a tendency to not wear my glasses when I should. And so when people share screens and I have that beautiful PowerPoint up there, I cannot always read the things. So what I'm going to encourage you to do, if you're like me that leans in for a lot of the viewing, if you take your mouse or your finger and drag it over past the people, you're going to see some lines that go up and down like this. When you do that, you can drag that PowerPoint bigger or smaller. That helps me a lot. Maybe it'll help you out as well. Again, if you need any help, we'll be in the chat today. I'm here to support you. And if during breakout rooms you have any questions, I'll be in that background. I want to toss it over to Terry. Thank you so much for allowing us to be part of this today.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the town hall meeting for Cook County as part of the Rural Child Care Innovation Program. I'm actually going to ask Jody to kick us off with a welcome and introduction. And Jody, would you also be able to introduce the core team members? I have a slide that I can put up with all of their names, but would you please include that in your introduction as well?
Sure. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this beautiful sunny spring evening here in Cook County. As many of you know, the lack of childcare providers and spots is not a new problem for our community. In fact, this topic has come up many times over the past few years. Most recently, the Cook County and Grand Portage Early Childhood Needs Assessments, which was conducted by Wilder Research on behalf of Sawtooth Mountain Clinic's Community Hub team, found that the lack of childcare was the #1 most unmet need of families in our area. The COVID pandemic has increased the strain on our current providers, highlighted staffing challenges, and added to the mental and financial obstacles in the profession. Yet we are not here to primarily focus on this problem. Instead, our goal tonight is to find viable solutions that will meet the needs of our families, providers, and community members. As a part of our Community Hub work on behalf of families with young children, we applied through a competitive grant process to participate in the Rural Child Care Innovation Program administered by First Children's Finance. With their facilitation, we are looking forward to outlining specific action steps that will result in more providers and available high-quality childcare spots throughout our county. We thank you again for joining us in this process and look forward to hearing both your ideas and stories as we move forward. I was going to introduce Terry Stuckelberg from the First Children's Finance. She's going to be the one to lead our discussion. And then we have a core team member, core teams. Pat Campanero is our business consultant. Nancie Deming works with the Sawtooth Mountain Clinic, and she is actually mostly in charge of this child care initiative. Beth Drost from Prosperity North, the EDA of Cook County. Bill Hansen, Business Philanthropy. Rachel Lichty, Cook County School District and Sawtooth Mountain Clinic. Emily Marshall, Cook County YMCA. April McCormick, Grand Portage Tribal Council. Krista Olson, the Cook County Public Schools, ECFE, and Everything Early Childhood Coordinator. Kelsey Kennedy, Cook County Higher Education. Ellen Seitz, I believe, is now at Sawtooth Mountain Clinic, was at Cooperation Station. Jared Swader from the Grand Portage Band, myself, and then Heidi Akins is the Cook County Child Care Licensor. Now on to you, Terry.
Okay, I'm actually going to let Patricia start us off. I'll introduce myself quickly, and then I'm going to have Patricia take back over. So thank you to all of you for joining us tonight. My name's Terry Stuckelberg. I'm a business development manager for First Children's Finance. And you'll be learning a little bit more about our organization in just a couple of minutes. I manage the eastern side of the state of Minnesota. So from all the way up at the Canadian border down to the Iowa border, on the eastern side of the state, I have a team of currently four other individuals who assist me with that work. Previous to my job here at First Children's Finance, and I've been here a little over, well, going on 2.5 years now. And prior to that, I spent about 13 years at the Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation, which is a sister foundation to the Northland Foundation up in your region. And in my position there, I worked in early childhood as the early childhood director, supporting various types of early childhood programs, doing grant making, and all those kinds of things. I have a background in business administration. And as you can see here, I've done a variety of different things in the business world as well. I graduated from what used to be Mankato State University, now Minnesota State Mankato, with that degree in business management and human resource management. So I'm going to let Patricia take it away. She's going to start off our evening for us, and she can introduce herself as well.
Hello, everybody. I'm Patricia Welsh. I am the Business Development Specialist for Northeastern Minnesota. I live up here in Virginia on the Iron Range. I was an in-home childcare provider for over 20 years here in my community. And then I became a teacher at a center and became a director of that center before joining First Finance in 2018. I'm so glad you are here with us tonight. And Terry, you want to go forward a slide? This slide showcases where you are in Cook County. You can see you're way up in the tip of that arrowhead, as you all know. And I love this quote by Chris Bevel, the editor of Prairie Business Magazine. It says, if employees can't find quality work for their children, they won't work for you. They won't move to your community, or they'll be forced to move away, or they might have to consider quitting their job to stay at home with their children because they have no other option, which is so true. And then we can go forward a slide there, Terry, and we'll talk about our work for the evening. Tonight, you're going to understand a little more about the RCCIP process that your county is going through. We're going to review those community findings. We're going to have some guided group exercise on finding solutions for the why. And you're going to go into project teams and solution development. And then this is the Rural Childcare Innovation Program overview. So the RCCIP, had an application process that was a formal process that interested communities like yours had to complete. Cook County was selected to participate in the RCCIP along with New Ulm, Ortonville, Montevideo, East Grand Forks, and Madelia. And each of those communities is in a different stage of this process. And the process is quite the process, as outlined on this slide. It started with pre-work, where we did childcare background data gathering, promotion. Then we did a childcare appreciation event for the providers in your county. And tonight we're at the town hall where we're going to showcase those findings. We're going to get community input from all of you and identify potential community solutions. At that point, we'll move into the implementation phase, where we'll refine the goals from the town hall. We'll identify some projects that build supply and sustain supply, and we'll identify action steps. And then we'll go into a call to action where we'll execute those projects, we'll identify resources and solidify some partnerships. And it'll be summed up with learning communities that are web-based and connect you with other communities that have been through this process. And up to this point, if you go forward a slide, Terry, your core team has been engaged with your community through focus groups, one-on-one meetings. We did surveys with parents, providers, and employers in the area, and they had some presentations that they did about the process. Go forward with, there we go. And thank you to all the providers that are here tonight. What you do is the heavy lifting every day in our communities. And so for those of you that don't know about First Children's Finance, we're going to overview a little bit that process. What does First Children's Finance do? Our work is conducted on 3 basic levels: the individual business level, at the community level, and at the system level. This work makes many forms, but is best described through the following activities: business development programs, financial modeling, consulting, training and technical assistance, and engaging the private sector and our loan fund. And what providers do matters, right? Working parents cannot access and maintain productive employment today without affordable quality care and education for their children. Tomorrow's workforce will not be prepared to succeed in the global economy unless all children receive quality care and education today. And the return on investment in quality care reduces long-term costs to the public and private sectors. Art Rolnick and others at the Federal Reserve have researched this, and they concluded that there was a 10 to 15% return on invested dollars in early childhood education. And now I'm going to turn it over to Terry, who's going to talk about your local area analysis and data.
Oh, Patricia, before I do that, would you be willing to share briefly about one of the RCCIP communities that you were a part of before you started at First Children's Finance?
Sorry about that. I completely forgot I was going to do that. Yes. Before I joined First Children's Finance, I actually went through this process and was the core team lead for the Quad Cities. And through this process, we had a great core team and were able to bring about different solutions here in the Quad Cities. One of our successes was we have a childcare center that went up in Eveleth called Brandy's Little Bears. And that center was a direct result of some of our community solutions. So the project works great. The whole process is amazing. And as a result of it, I joined First Children's Finance and became a part of their team. Sorry, Terry, I completely forgot I was going to do that.
No worries at all. The other thing I want to mention before I get started is that we believe it might be quite possible that we have some news reporters or TV stations as part of our group. If anyone is here from any of those, would you be willing to introduce yourself to everyone?
Hi, how's it going? I'm Quinn. I'm a reporter with Channel 6 and Channel 3 in Duluth. So yeah, that's me. I'm just going to be watching, kind of seeing what the situation is and what kinds of solutions you guys are pitching tonight. So
Awesome. Well, we're glad you're here, Quinn. Thanks for being here. Just wanted to let everyone know that Quinn is here. And it's quite possible that, you know, your solutions that you develop might be on the news tonight. Do we
definitely
have
a possibility.
Other,
yeah.
Yeah. Do we have anyone else joining us tonight? Okay, great. Well, I'm going to go ahead and dive in. I'm going to share with you some of the data that was collected through the surveys that we had, as well as some initial data that had previously been gathered. I'm going to move through it rather quickly because I know that Cook County has heard about the childcare need for quite some time now, and has a real desire to get moving forward quickly with solutions. I do want us all to have the same background knowledge as we're getting into this work. So I do want to share the information, but I'll do it quickly. So if there are any questions, I will ask once I get through the information, and you can certainly ask your questions at that point. So first, I want to share the status of what childcare in Cook County looks like. This was as of January of this year. There are 4 active family childcare providers in the county that have a max capacity of 52 children, according to their licenses. There's also 1 childcare center, which has a licensed capacity of 42, however, is not able to operate at that licensed capacity due to a lack of staff at this point. So they are currently operating with 20 children in their care. And as of January, all 72 of those spots are currently filled. 2 of 4 family providers accept infants, but they do not have any current openings. And the center is not able to find enough staff to operate their infant room. So we're seeing and hearing about a huge shortage of availability of childcare, in particular for infants and toddlers. If we look up at the availability of childcare broken down by the zip code or by communities, you can see that the majority of the care lies in the zip code of 55604 for Grand Marais. We've got the center and 3 of those family providers with a total capacity of 60 in the Grand Marais area. And this second to the last column, the one that says expected number of children under age 5, that is some information that comes from the US Census data and tells us what the estimated number of children with all parents, all available parents in the workforce under age 5 in each of these zip codes. So in Grand Marais, it's 124 children. So if you have 60 slots, but you have 124 children, that means you're short approximately 64 slots in that zip code alone. And you can see what the shortage is then for Grand Portage, Hovland, Lutzen, Schrader, and Tofte. So a total need in all of those zip codes of 114 slots in childcare for children birth to age 5. So like Patricia mentioned, over the last few months, we've done many community surveys, including one for employers, one for parents, one for family childcare providers, and one for the center that's located in Grand Marais. And so some of these next slides are going to be the information that we gathered through those surveys that I want to share with all of you. And here you can see on this slide, and we had, I'll tell you, we had 3 family providers out of the 4 that responded on the survey, and 2 of them answered this question. So basically half of those 4 have said that they plan to continue in the childcare business for 10 plus years. And so they have no desire to leave the field, which is great news for us, right? Because we want to sustain the existing providers that we have. We want to keep them around as long as we can. Also knowing that there's a need for more childcare in the area. This next slide talks about the availability of care in the area, and we can see it from the perspective of each of those 4 different surveys that we sent out. So the light blue is the family childcare, center is the green, parents is orange, and employers are the dark blue or purplish color. And you can see that almost all of those categories very poor is the availability of childcare. And the rest pretty much fall in that poor to fair category. So in Cook County, we had 65 participants who did that parent survey. We had 18 that did the employer survey. And like I mentioned before, 3 family providers and the 1 center. And you can see there's pretty much general consensus here that the availability of childcare in the area is very poor. Probably nothing new that you didn't already know, but it helps to confirm it for us and gives us data behind that. Another result from the surveys that we asked parents what types of care they're using currently for their children. And here you can see, remember there were about 65 parents who responded to the survey. So of those 65, this is how the breakout was. About 4% of them are currently working from home. And so they have their children at home with them. We didn't have any that are using a nanny or a babysitter, none that are using Head Start, none that said they're using pre-kindergarten programs. 12% said preschool, 46% said a child care center, 15% said they're utilizing unlicensed childcare in someone else's home. So that would be what we call family, friend, and neighbor care. And then 42% of them said that they're utilizing licensed family childcare. So we also asked those parents if the lack of childcare in Cook County has had an impact on their family planning. So has it made a difference in whether or not they had children at all, or if they had additional children? And 46% of them, so nearly half of them, said yes, it has. And I will tell you, we ask this question, we ask all these questions in all of the communities that we do this work in. When we ask this question, and we've aggregated the data from the past 2 years, it's usually around 52% of respondents that say yes to this question. So you're very close to that same number. And so it's really, you can see that it's impacting whether or not people in your area are growing their families and having more children. And here's a quote from someone, a local parent who completed the survey. And they said, if you can find childcare at all, you're extremely lucky. So you might ask yourself, how is that gap supported? Where are those children at if they're not in some form of childcare during the day? And so historically, there's a variety of different ways that we see that communities are able to support those families. Often families are putting together a hodgepodge of childcare. Maybe it's, one person is taking their child one day a week, another person's got them a couple days a week. They go to grandma and grandpa's another couple days a week. Maybe they work from home a couple days a week and they can keep them home with them at that point. So there's a lot of different scenarios obviously out there. These are the main ways that we see that these families are being served. The first is through a variance. And this just depends upon from Minnesota County, from one county to another, what's allowed, but family child care licensing can offer variances to their providers, allowing them to take additional children. Most of the time when we see this happen, it happens because maybe a provider has an existing family and they're having a new baby. So the provider might ask for a variance to accept that new baby into their care for a few months until a child ages up and can move to the next age category. It's usually for a shortened period of time and happens on occasion. It's not usually a typical thing that happens all the time. Another way that we see these families being served is through legal unlicensed care. And that's what we call family, friend, and neighbor care. So this might be grandma or grandpa, aunt or uncle. It might be the neighbor lady. It might be a friend of mom or dad. It's still legal to care for one family outside of your own and not have to have a child care license. So it is allowable. And that's often what we see when these care gets kind of put together through a hodgepodge of different ways. Another thing that we see is unemployment. Obviously, there's some parents who then will either it makes no sense for them to work because financially they wouldn't be bringing home any money, so they'll elect to stay home with their children. They might want to be a stay-at-home parent. Maybe they just can't find any care, and so they have no other option. They don't have family around. Another option that we see sometimes is what we refer to as underemployment. Or shift alignment. So you might see one parent is working day shift, one parent is working night shift, so that one of them is always home with the kids. This is hard on families, obviously, as you all know, when the parents don't get to see one another or they don't get a whole lot of family time. We know it's not the best situation for families. Another example we might see here is underemployment. So this means you might have a particular degree in something. Let's say, for example, mom has a degree in accounting, but her spouse is already working during the day, has maybe the higher paying job. So the spouse is working during the day and mom is maybe picking up some night shifts working at waitressing or, working somewhere. Maybe she's picking up some weekend shifts, that kind of a thing, just to supplement their income. She's not working in the field where she has an education at this point. She's doing what meets her family's needs best. Another option, of course, is illegal, unlicensed care. Obviously, this is one we don't condone or don't like to see. And then the final option is out of area care, which means maybe if parents are traveling out of the area to go to work, they might be bringing their child right along with them every day and finding care in that community because it's more readily available. So those are the kinds of main ways that we're seeing that communities are dealing with the childcare shortage. If you don't already know, the childcare shortage is a thing across the whole nation, across the whole state of Minnesota. So you're not experiencing anything that's, any different than what a lot of communities are experiencing. However, your geography in Cook County does give us a little bit of a unique situation to deal with. So next, let's talk about local area quality of programs and rates, tuition rates. So Minnesota has one system, quality rating and improvement system is what they call it. Every state in the nation has one of those, and it's a way for parents and families to know if their children are in a high quality environment. In Minnesota, we call that program Parent Aware. It's completely voluntary. Providers don't have to participate in it. But if they do participate, and it looks like in Cook County, we have a pretty high percentage of participation. You can see their blue graph here is Cook County's participation, and the green one is for the state as a whole. So there are 4 stars in the Parent Aware rating system, and we like to refer to it as a journey. So many providers will start out at a 1 star, and as they grow and develop and expand their program with more intensive, curriculum and assessment and those kinds of things, they move through that journey from a 1 star to a 2 star to a 3 star to a 4 star. So 4 star is the highest. I do want to make note that anything 1 star and above is a provider going above and beyond licensing requirements. So anything that they are doing already will meet those licensing requirements, and they're taking it beyond that. So it is quite a commitment for them in many cases to take on the Parent Aware program. So it looks like in Cook County, we don't have any providers that are a 1 or a 2-star rated program, but we do have some that are 3 or 4-star rated programs. We do have some non-DHS licensed programs. I'm guessing in this instance, it's the public school program, excuse me, that has a Parent Aware rating. And then on the far right, you can see the percentage of total programs with a rating. Again, it's significantly higher in your area than in other parts of the state. So that's good news. Some more of the perceptions that we gathered from the survey information. We asked parents who completed the survey to prioritize these seven statements related to childcare for their children and how important these are to them. So this was the average rate ranking for the 65 parents that completed this survey. Their first and most important concern is safe and healthy environment for their children. Their second is that it be conveniently located. Third is that it be licensed by DHS. Fourth is that it uses an educational curriculum. Fifth is that the provider has a high level of education. Sixth is that it be a Parent Aware rated program. And finally, seventh, that it's someone that they know. So one of the questions that we asked parents who completed the survey is if they enroll their children in paid childcare, and they either said yes or they said no. So of those people who said no, that they're not enrolling their children into paid childcare, we asked them why. Please help us understand why. And that's what this chart shows you. So 16% of the parents who completed the survey have chosen to be stay-at-home parents. So it's their choice. They're a stay-at-home parent. 28% say that their spouse or partner and I adjust our work schedules to meet our childcare needs. So that might be where we're seeing that shift alignment. Maybe with COVID, one of them is working from home, so they have some flexibility, whatever that looks like. 28% of those families say that's why they're not using paid childcare. 6% said they can't afford it. That's a relatively low number. Kind of interesting to see that there. 38% said that they can't find an appropriate option. So it might be that they only need part-time care, they can't find that. It might be that they need some kind of off hours that aren't being offered by the programs that are out there. But 38% of them said that's why they're not enrolling. And then 13%, there was some other reason. And when I looked at those reasons, there was not really any consensus among them. It was just kind of a lot of random things that they said as far as other reasons why they're not utilizing paid childcare. So this slide looks at Cook County's market rates for childcare. And this is a study that is put out by, the slide says 2018, but these are the latest numbers from 2021. So I apologize that that didn't get fixed. The Department of Human Services puts out this market rate study by county. And what it does is look at providers who respond and what their rates are as far as what they're charging families for tuition. So when we look at this study, it's divided into percentiles. So there's a 25th percentile, a 50th percentile, 75th. And here I'm showing you the 75th percentile because when we work with providers, that's generally where we like them to fall. And so that means that 75% of programs are charging less than this amount and 25% are charging more. So you can see on the top half of the slide is the center rates. So for an infant, we're looking at a weekly rate of $213, toddler $199, preschooler $185, and school-aged $151. And then the bottom half of the slide is for family childcare. And you can see there, infant is $200, toddler is the same at $200, preschool $185, and school-aged $170. So kind of interesting there. Sometimes with this latest market rate study, I have to say the numbers don't always make sense to me. The fact that the school-aged number for family childcare is 170 versus 151 for a center. It usually would be the other way around. Family would be smaller than a center. So it's been kind of interesting to see this latest market rate study that's come out. The numbers seem a little bit off. However, what the state of Minnesota has done is taken this 2021 market rate study, and they've made adjustments to the CCAP rates, which is the Child Care Assistance Program rates in the counties, to try and make them more in line with where they should be on a national level. Up until recently, Minnesota did not meet the federal requirements for CCAP reimbursement for families. Our rates hadn't been adjusted in some exorbitant amount of years, like 25 years or something. It was a long time. And so they recently made those adjustments, and this is what those reimbursements look like. So what this means is low-income families who qualify for child care assistance, which is through the county, are able to get part of their child care paid for if they're able to get into the child care assistance program. And so the county will have a set amount that they're able to reimburse to the program on behalf of that family on a weekly basis, depending upon how many hours the child is in care at that facility. So this slide shows you for centers, again on the top, and family providers on the bottom, what the max weekly reimbursement that Cook County will reimburse for a child. And if the program charges more than this amount, then the family is responsible to pay that amount themselves. And quite often they'll also have what's called a copay, which will be dependent upon what their income level is. The county will say, you know, your copay is $30 a week or whatever. So then they have to pay $30 out of that, let's say $222 for an infant. And if the program itself charges $225, they'd also be responsible for that extra $3 to get to the $225. So they'd have to pay $33 a week towards their child's care. So another thing that happens with the child care assistance program is these programs that have a parent aware rating that's a 3-star or a 4-star are able to get reimbursed at a higher rate. So the goal here is that we want kids who are at higher risk, usually typically low income children are, we want them to be placed in stable, high quality environments in their early years. And so the theory behind this is that the county is then reimbursing the providers actually for what is more in line with the true cost of care. So as we at First Children's Finance work on the business side with providers, we want to make sure that they're charging what they should be to be able to be in line with these reimbursement rates. So this slide shows you what a 4-star program gets reimbursed. So if you remember on the slide I showed you before, the standard reimbursement with no quality differential, that means they're not parent aware rated, or they have a 1-star or a 2-star, they would get reimbursed $222 per week for an infant. When we look at a 4-star rated program that qualifies for a 20% differential, they're able to get reimbursed a higher rate at $266.40 per week for that same infant because they are parent aware rated and they're offering a high quality environment. So the assumption is, and it's true, is that the higher quality program, it costs more to offer a higher quality program. And so those providers can then get reimbursed at a higher rate. So next, we're going to talk about the local economic impact of this childcare shortage. So there is a direct connection between childcare and the local economy. Without adequate supply of good quality childcare, local employees and employers alike lose out. The following slides that I'm going to show you here demonstrate how this is impacting the local Cook County area. Like I mentioned before, we had 18 employers who completed this survey, which is a really high number for your area. So that's fantastic participation. And as we looked further at the breakdown of those 18 employers that answered the questions, 83% of them were small employers with less than 25 employees. So that's a pretty significant number of the respondents. 6% of the employers were a little bit larger and had employees somewhere between 26 and 50 employees. Another 6% had between 51 and 100 employees. And the final 6% had between 101 and 250 employees. So definitely a lot of small businesses responding to the survey, but still a fair number, that have 26 and more employees. So we asked the same question to parents who completed the survey, and we asked it again to employers who completed the survey. And this is always a fun one for me to share, because oftentimes what the parents see in this is different from what the employer's perspective is. And so somehow along the lines, there's a little bit of a disconnect there. But this slide shows us in the blue is the parents' response level, and in the green is the employer's response level. So for example, if you look at tardiness to work, you can see that parents say that that's really only probably about 26% of the time an issue for them in the past 12 months, whereas employers think it's an issue about 45% of the time. So there's quite a difference there between the responses. And that's quite often what we see. In fact, employers will say that childcare is to blame for a lot of these issues at a much higher rate than what the actual parents will say. So it's very interesting. And it doesn't look much different here than it does in any other community that I've worked in. So pretty consistent that way. Some more information on the economic impact of childcare in the area. So 40% of the parents that we surveyed withdrew from the workforce or declined employment due to childcare arrangements. That's a pretty significant number. That's nearly half of the employers have at some point in their career either declined employment or withdrew from the workforce because of childcare. 44% of employers say that the childcare shortage has impacted their ability to attract employees to their businesses, and 33% of employers say that the childcare shortage has impacted their ability to retain their employees. So pretty significant numbers there. Another question here that we ask both parents and employers is what type of childcare is needed? So here's what we see. Both say at a pretty significant rate that daytime care is needed. That's usually always the highest. And you can see on evening and weekend care that the employers think the need for childcare is a little bit higher versus what parents say there. A lot of times it's kind of interesting in communities, I'll see that will be drastically different. And what we see is that the employers think that's why people don't want to work second shift or overnight shift. because they can't find childcare. But the reality is that families really don't like their children to be in childcare during those hours. So communities think that they need to add those types of childcare, but in reality, if it was offered, many parents wouldn't take advantage of it. And so we oftentimes will see, that be kind of a flop in a community if it's tried. Here, I think with weekend care, you can see there's a big difference. Evening care is much closer, rotating is pretty close, and then the other needs included after school care for some children who are in kindergarten, and then people were looking for part-time preschool options that they weren't able to find, apparently. So yeah, another interesting perspective, and it's really, really interesting, in my opinion, to compare what the employers think to what the parents think. The next question we asked was, how far do you travel out of your way, one direction, for childcare? You can see here 45%, 46% actually said they travel less than a mile. That's really good given the geography that you have. And the distance, how spread out Cook County is. Another 27% said they're traveling 2 to 10 miles. 19% said they're traveling 11 to 30 miles, and then 8% are traveling more than 30 miles one way to childcare. So we asked local businesses if the shortage of childcare has impacted them. And to no surprise, 67% of them said yes, that it has impacted their business. Here's a quote from a local employer saying it has created another difficulty in that it's hard to attract a parent to work if they don't have childcare. So we asked employers if they would be willing to assist in addressing the childcare shortage. And here's what they said. So 80% of them said they already do or are willing to create flexible schedules for their employees. 47% of them said they already do or are willing to provide flexible spending accounts for childcare. 7% of them said that they're willing to provide money to employees to use towards childcare expenses. Another 7% said that they're willing to provide space for a childcare business. We want to find out who that is. Another 7% said that they're willing to own and operate a childcare business. We want to find out who that is also, because they are definitely key people that we want to engage in our work. 33% of them said that they're willing to financially support or donate to a childcare business. And then the 33% also said other. And some things in that other category included a variety of items such as donating gift certificates. One of them said that this isn't an employer issue, it's a societal issue. Another one said that we already do all of these things to support our employees. So there was a variety of responses where people chose the other option there. All right, so next we're going to talk about the factors in the community that are involved in this childcare shortage. There's a direct connection between childcare and the local economy, like we've talked about before. Without the adequate supply of good quality childcare, local employees and employers alike lose out. The following slides are going to demonstrate how this is impacting Cook County. Just a couple of quotes, one from a local parent, the other from a local employer. Parent says, providers cannot make enough money and families cannot afford childcare. The local employer says, I have had employees resign due to the lack of childcare. So the first community factor is that it's really challenging to be a child care provider. This is really difficult work. And these providers work really, really hard to care for children. Centers have a difficult time finding and keeping good quality workers, and they can't really afford to pay them more than just over minimum wage. Unfortunately, when we look at the business side of childcare, the profit margin is extremely thin, therefore making it difficult to pay livable wages to the staff. Low wages, long hours, and oftentimes no benefits, such as health insurance, retirement, and PTO are difficult for centers to offer to their staff. There's oftentimes a lack of space to expand or operate outside of the home. So there might be some family childcare providers who are willing to expand and start a childcare center business, but they oftentimes don't know where to start and they need some help finding spaces that might work. Childcare is a really complicated business model. It's constantly changing, and COVID has put a real damper on the childcare industry. It's made things even more complicated than it already was before. A childcare business is expensive to start, and the first year may or may not, honestly, nearly never has a positive cash flow. We usually look to year 2, 3, and 4 to see a positive cash flow, hopefully so that we can make up some of that loss in the first year. There's also a high burnout and shortage of interest to be a provider. And here's a quote from a local parent. "Childcare is an extremely hard business with a high burnout rate. We need to support and love our providers." And isn't that the truth? Another community factor that we hear a lot about is quality and regulations. Really two sides of one coin. Overall, parents agree that there are quality childcare businesses out there, but overall quality is still a concern. Parents are concerned about where they put their children every day. Currently, many parents are forced to take what they can get, even if they do not like or trust a childcare program. Childcare is a highly regulated industry. It's difficult for providers. There's a lot of rules and regulations that they have to keep up on, and those rules and regulations are constantly changing. So they have to always be at the top of their game when it comes to knowing and what those regulations are. The ratios for numbers of children in younger age groups reduces the number of infants and toddlers a provider can take. And it really makes it difficult to cash flow. It makes it difficult to cash flow for centers. Infant rooms in small communities usually never make money. We know they're always going to operate at a loss. But often that's where the largest need is. So you have to figure out a way to offset the loss in those infant rooms by also enrolling preschoolers and school-aged children. And when you have programs like maybe school-based after school programs that take school-aged kids out of the child care center's business model, then that's when we start to have issues and we can't cash flow. Potential new providers are frightened of the regulations, and experienced providers are frustrated and wore out. So here's a quote from a local child care program. "We need to create partnerships, work together to tackle this issue, and create sustainable childcare." So that's great to see that we have a local provider who knows that and is interested in doing that. Another community factor that we see in childcare: the cost is high and the availability is low. Families have a hard time finding and affording childcare. Employers see the need to provide flexibility to schedules when possible to accommodate the lack of childcare, which is a good thing. I think COVID has opened many employers' eyes to the need for that. Infant care is very hard to find. Parents are trying to line up infant care in early pregnancy or before they even become pregnant. And from the discussions we had with the local providers in your area, you almost need to be on a wait list 2 or 3 years in advance to get a spot. So it's a pretty significant wait time to get a spot for an infant. Childcare has a small profit margin. It's expensive to start, and it may not ever or will be really hard to cash flow. And there are a lack of resources out there. Although COVID again has brought more awareness to the childcare industry and the need, and we're seeing more resources becoming available, which is great. Parents want high quality care, but they can't pay enough to compensate providers. Employers struggle to cover when employees have challenges with childcare. It's hard to find care that meets families' needs. Programs have a hard time charging enough to maintain their staff or be financially stable. And there's a high cost of living expenses for families. So here's a quote from a local parent. I know many who have quit their jobs after their second child was born because they would have to pay to go to work. So these 6 things are the general factors that we see across all the communities that we work in, contributing to these childcare challenges. There is a shortage in the childcare workforce. There are baby boomers who are retiring, and COVID has actually encouraged some of them who might have stayed in the industry longer to retire because they've had enough. So we're seeing a large number of retirements in childcare, but we're not seeing as many young people wanting to go in this field. Things are kind of changing and evolving. We're seeing that some young people are choosing to go into childcare because they have to stay home with their own children, or it allows them to stay home with their own children. But once their children get into the school system and they're 5, 6 and older, then they decide that they've had enough of childcare and they go back into the general workforce. And so we're seeing people that are going into childcare and staying in it for a lesser number of years. They might stay in it for 5 to 8 years while their kids are little, and then they choose to stop providing childcare and go back into the workforce and get a job in a different field. We're not seeing providers who are staying in it for the long term, like some providers who might have been in it for 30 years, 40 years. Some of their time commitments are unbelievable. It's fantastic what some of these generally women do for families and children in their communities. So there's a shortage of people who want to go into this field. And obviously you can know why. It's high burnout, it's long hours, and it's not a lot of money. Parents and families want more choices. So as we talk to them, they're looking for what fits their lifestyle best. Sometimes they need part-time. Sometimes they might need off hours. Sometimes they want a nature-based program, or they want a STEM program, or they want some other area of focus, maybe Montessori or something like that fits their child's needs and the kind of environment they want their child to be in. And when we have a shortage of childcare in general, sometimes we just need more childcare, and it's harder to offer some of those niche markets of childcare. We've talked about it being really difficult to be a provider. Community recognition and support is often lacking for childcare providers. We might remember them on those special day of Childcare Appreciation Day every year, but the rest of the year, communities forget that they're, a viable part of the local economy. Infant and toddler care is really hard to find, and that's because of those ratios and the limited number that providers can care for. And some family providers don't even care for infant and toddlers because it makes it more difficult for them to work with preschoolers and older kids. Prices are high. The cost of childcare is very high, and the cost of delivery is high. All right, well, enough about all that doom and gloom about childcare. Now we've all got a level playing field on our knowledge and what it looks like in Cook County. Then the rest of our time together tonight is going to be getting to work. We're going to do some brainstorming around possible solutions to this childcare shortage. And I've heard through the grapevine that you have some ideas out there, and now's your chance to share them. So as we put you into breakout rooms, I want you to make sure that you speak up, share your ideas. No idea is a bad idea at this point. We're brainstorming and we want to capture every idea that we possibly can capture. So the magic of this project really happens when we're able to harness the creativity and interconnectedness of rural communities. When we're able to bring together local resources, the energy, the relationship, and the dollars, and innovation, and connect it to the right size childcare model that works for your community, we see the development of these sustainable solutions to the childcare shortage. So, next, we're going to have the opportunity to discuss and identify ways to support both the existing providers, the existing workforce of childcare in Cook County, and new programs in Cook County. We're going to divide out into 6 breakout rooms, which you can see on your screen right now. And I would like you to self-select which category sounds the most interesting to you, or which one you feel you can add the most value to that discussion. So when Kelsey sets us free, we are going to go, you can self-select from those six topics. You pick the one you want to go to. And when you get in there, there's going to be one of the core team members who's going to be responsible for facilitating the discussion and for taking notes. And I want you to come up with every solution that will address that category that you can think of. And it can be outside of the box, it can be wild and crazy. We want to, at this point, capture every idea we possibly can. So if you're going into room number 1, that topic is training, and you're going to talk about how you can support the existing providers and other providers who might, other people who might be interested in entering into the childcare field with their training needs. And you're going to do the same thing around workforce development in room number 2. So when we say workforce development, we're talking about getting more people to go into this childcare field. How do we develop the childcare workforce and grow the childcare workforce? In room number 3, it's going to be community education and partnerships. So this one's going to be about how do we educate the community about this issue. If that's not a problem in Cook County, if that's already been done, then you're going to look more at just partnerships. Who are those different partners in the community that are going to be interested in helping make these childcare solutions work? Identify them and talk about different partnerships that you can have. Room number 4 is going to talk about financial supports and incentives. So, you know, what are some things that Cook County could do to offer financial supports to existing providers who might expand, or they need some support to keep their business up and going. Also incentives for new people to get into the childcare field. Room number 5 is going to be about recognition. How can we recognize those providers, both the existing providers and new ones, and recognize them for what they do? And then room number 6 is around facilities. So what facilities in Cook County exist that could be utilized for childcare? It could be pieces of land, it could be existing buildings, it could involve some of those employers who said that they're interested in helping to support childcare startup. And what you're going to see as we come back together after this brainstorming session is that we're going to see some overlap in some of these groups. Like some of the ideas are going to be the same in room number 3 that are the same in room number 4. That's okay. We just want to, at this point, gather as many ideas as we can. And it will be the responsibility of the core team after this town hall meeting to narrow things down and put more focus into what are the specific things that we're going to be working on. But for right now, we want to get all the ideas captured. I am going to give you 20 minutes in the breakout rooms for you to brainstorm. At this point, you're only brainstorming. So you're writing down as many ideas as you can think of. And then we're going to come back together at as a large group. And the core team member who's been leading your discussion and facilitating and taking notes is going to give us a very brief overview of some of the ideas that you talked about in your room, so that everybody kind of knows what was discussed and we're all on the same page. And then after that, you're going to be able to self-select and go back into one of those 6 breakout rooms, and you might go into the same one, you might not, depending upon which one sounds really intriguing to you that you'd like to be involved in. And then we're going to narrow those ideas down, and we're going to pick 3 ideas from each room. And then we're going to flesh those ideas out in greater detail. So the one thing I want to mention is that as we do breakout rooms and you self-select, let's say nobody picks one of these rooms, so nobody goes to that room. That's perfectly fine. But then that means that nobody will be working on that category, and it's kind of dead at that point. We don't dedicate any time, because if we don't have any people who want to invest their time and their resources in that one, we don't want to waste our time on it. Now, if you go into a room and there's only 1 or 2 of you in there, that's probably not a big enough group. So at that point, then come back to the main screen, and you can self-select to go into a different breakout room. And if you have trouble, Kelsey can certainly help us with that, I think. All right, does anyone have any questions?
I have 2 more notes. One, to let you know, this is not the only time you get to go in a breakout room. So if you pick one and you're like, but I want to pick 2, you'll have another chance in the future. Also, if you were trying to communicate and you're in a group and you're just like, I need help with some way, the chat still works. So I'll be in the chat monitoring if you need anything at all. And
Awesome.
I'm
And we're going to give you a 5-minute warning, so you know when you have 5 minutes left. And then we'll come back as a group and share. Emily,
Terry, if there's a group that only has 1 or 2 people in it, can we do a mass chat to everyone to let them know in case there was somebody that was interested in that also, but just picked something else for whatever reason, to give them the opportunity to switch?
I think so. Kelsey, can you do that? Yeah.
Yep. But also, again, just a reminder that you could come back and we could go
Yep.
into the second group the second time and say, hey, that was a topic that didn't get covered because nobody joined us. This next time, let's focus in on that.
Okay,
Yep.
Good idea.
Okay, if there's no more questions, 20 minutes in your brainstorming sessions.
So how do you join it? Supposed to click on it?
Yep. You'll
Yep.
see it pop up and you should have the option to join.
You'll see a list of everyone's names, so scroll down to the bottom and you should see them there.
Oh, there we go. It's down in the bottom, like
In the right hand.
breakout rooms next to the reactions button. You got to click the panel that says breakout rooms.
For some people, it pops up on their screen, but it just depends on the technology.
Okay, bye.
So their last couple seconds.
Just coming back. You're welcome back. All right. Well, I hope that your breakout sessions went well, everyone. You got all your ideas down and recorded. I'm sure you had lots of fantastic ones.
we were just getting going here and all of a sudden we got cut off and Maria Carson was in the middle of a very good statement. So I'm going to make up what she was going to say at the end of that one.
You can finish it when we go back into the breakout groups again too.
Yep.
All right, do we think, Kelsey, do we have everyone back?
Yeah, everybody should be back. That's going to be here.
Okay, great. Well, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for your brainstorming and sharing your ideas. We're going to take a few minutes, and if I could have the core team members and note takers from, we ended up with 4 groups. No one went to the training group and no one went to the recognition group. So those 2 are going to be eliminated. And so we're left with 4 groups. And I'm going to ask each of those core team members to share briefly and as quickly as you can what kind of ideas were shared in your groups. So the workforce development, and I think that was you, Pat, wasn't it?
That was me. And
right.
I will quickly go through this. Very interesting group with a lot of good ideas. We came up with several that make some sense to me. I think many times increasing the child care slots, people tend to stay away or stray from that because it sounds like it's too much work. It sounds like the licensing requirements are too much, blah, 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 blah. So we thought I had Maria Carlson in this group and she suggested that she would be a mentor or bringing a mentor of some sort in to help someone who's interested in this work and help them work through the different things that they need to do would be really beneficial. We also talked about how it really does, wages need to increase. And it's hard to increase wages when you're a private provider. And we also talked about how do we promote the whole concept of childcare to the kids in school who might go on to college and or trade school and take some of these classes and come back and be childcare providers. And someone brought up a good point that says we have a career fair on April 7th, and hopefully someone will be there promoting childcare and that this is a course to go into in the beginning. Off the wall thing was how do we incent or allow teenage workers to come into our centers or into our private practices and augment and help with childcare. Kids love kids, and it would be nice to be able to bring them in with a minimum amount of work. Paperwork, too much paperwork all around. Somehow we need to minimize it. Help providers work through Parent Aware hoops because Parent Aware has a lot of resources and a lot of grants that really help providers be profitable. And then we did have a recognition piece here in our parking lot, which says, how do we rally community support to make people, daycare providers, feel valued? The supports that were provided during COVID were terrific. They need to be maintained rather than go away. So blah, 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 but that's my stuff.
Thanks, Pat. Sounds like some really great ideas there. Let's see, Krista, you were with the Community Education and Partnerships group.
Yes, so we had about 13 people in our group. So not everyone got to share and some people were just there to listen and observe. But one of the bigger ideas that came out was having the larger employers in our area partner to provide child care centers at their facilities. So then it was brought up, for instance, the Y is connected to the school, which is one of the larger employers. So what is keeping that center from getting full to capacity? And one of the things that was brought up was kind of the pay wage parameters and how the Y gets stuck only being able to pay a certain amount. And so how could we work together and join forces to try to provide higher wages? One way we're doing that is by writing a grant to be able to partnership and be able to pay more on top of that, but it's a grant, so that's not sustainable. So how can we continue to brainstorm on that? We also talked about the daycares and how to help support existing childcare programs. It is a lonely field, they're by themselves all day with children. There's a high burnout rate. So the discussion of creating a pool of subs or volunteers, not only to come in and help relieve them, because you have to be licensed to be able to do that for them to leave and go to a dentist appointment, but also just share the responsibilities that happen at the child care centers. or coming in and kind of spreading that responsibility out between other people that are retired that want to come in and just work with children, come in and read a book, whatever that might be. And then one of our parking lot ideas was increasing local tax to support childcare and subsidize the cost, which I believe is a Bill Hansen idea that was being discussed potentially in the financial support group. But that 20 minutes went really fast.
Okay, thanks, Krista. And then the financial supports and incentives group, and that was led by Beth.
Yes, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people in our group. So we had a nice discussion, and we heard from some parents firsthand about what they're doing right now. And we heard from Grace, who is taking personal leave to go cook for Cooperation Station. And so we have parents taking PTO to go to the daycare. And so what could we do to help that? There, as Krista was talking about, we could do grant funds, but to kind of build on any grant funds that we get, we can be creative with leveraging financing and while leveraging those grants that we do get so that we can pay our childcare providers more. Another thing is let's just change the whole thinking about what this should be. Let's make that our mission, and don't focus on childcare as a for-profit business, because it doesn't work. We know it doesn't work. It doesn't pan out. There's no profit in childcare. And so let's stop even pretending that that's a thing. Everything, the community center also came up in our conversation, which was interesting. And businesses in the county could possibly pool to offer a childcare center together, more housing. And we should probably find childcare to support our existing childcare programs, find stable subsidies that people can really count on to be there, and things that are equitable for all caregivers. Something that doesn't treat it gives any licensed childcare provider a chance to be able to receive the incentive or the help. There was a lot said, and it was really compelling listening to the parents themselves, and I really hope we might have some more opportunities to be able to listen to the parents themselves. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. And finally, we have the facilities group, and that one was led by Emily.
Sorry, I have to minimize my screen somehow to find my notes. Okay, so our first question, how to increase the supply of childcare slots. Talked about incentivizing people in the community to become providers and receive training, encouraging more people to do it out of their homes, and really like recognizing that it can be tailored. They don't have to do it full time every day, Monday through Friday, and then working on mentoring those folks, but really having that incentive to have more people doing it out of their homes. Talked about the investment fund and potential of acquiring land to be able to build new facilities, and if the Cook County real estate fund could help with that. And then if there's land that might be available through county parcels that have been repossessed. We talked about, that some sites are not operating at full capacity. Could they rent out space to others that are wanting to get into the field and possibly long-term, or possibly serve as kind of an incubator for people to get a start, and as they work through plans of how they can expand, like a pod model of units, building some units that would work for both living and running a childcare, prioritizing those rentals or homes for that purpose, or some like employee housing that's designated to educators and available as long as they're educators. Talked about in terms of supporting existing childcare programs. Again, the career fair came up in incentivizing teens to get into the program, kind of building a feeder and building more interest in that. Talked about helping to expand current facilities if there are people out there that are doing childcare and have the capacity to expand, looking at ways maybe the development fund could invest in helping expand facilities, and just talking about who has the appetite for that, whether it's, churches or charter schools or existing programs. And then one that we didn't talk about, but is a small thing that maybe could help, and it kind of goes along with the people providing meals at Cooperation Station, but just like volunteer coordination for existing programs. So if there's groups of people that could do painting projects or yard work or any of those types of things to help support existing childcare programs as well, little light maintenance things.
Great, thanks, Emily. Lots of fantastic ideas out there. Thank you, everyone, for your sharing of ideas and the work you did in your groups. So next, let's see, let me advance my slide here. So next, we're going to get the opportunity to select the topic that you want to work on. It can be the group that you just left, or you might be intrigued more by one of these other group ideas that you've heard. So it's open to you to, again, self-select which group you'd like to go into. We're going to have those 4 categories: workforce development, community education and partnerships, financial supports and incentives, and facilities. And Kelsey's going to give you those as options for your breakout rooms. And I want you to think about these 5 questions as you're going into your breakout rooms. These are things that you might want to ask yourself about some of the potential solutions that were brainstormed in our last group session together. Think about each of these individually. Now, how can this solution help to solve the issue at hand, the why, the childcare shortage? Who else needs to be included in these discussions? So if you're talking about employers, who are those employers? Who might be people at those employers that might want to be involved? What additional resources might you need to make this project happen? What are the action steps that need to be developed to accomplish this solution? And how are you going to measure success? How are you going to know if this solution helped to address the childcare shortage? So those are 5 key things to keep in mind as you're thinking about these possible solutions in your small groups.
Are we taking the 3 ideas and asking those questions about the 3 ideas? Or what are we asking those questions about? Sorry.
They're just kind of things to help you spur thoughts. You're going to follow your worksheet if you're leading the group discussion. So you have one for idea 1, one for idea 2, one for idea 3. So you just want to work on basically completing that worksheet with your group. But these are just kinds of things that as people are thinking about these solutions, additional things to keep in mind to kind of make, to help them kind of define if it's a viable solution or not. So you're gonna have about 20, I think we can do 25 minutes this time, Kelsey, in your groups. Again, you're gonna have the same, there'll be a core team member, the same people in there to facilitate the conversation and take notes. You're going to narrow down all of those solutions that you brainstormed to try to keep it around 3 ideas for your category. And at least one of those has got to create new slots of childcare. So you can have ideas that support existing childcare, but we have to have some ideas that are going to add to the supply of childcare in Cook County, because that's part of our goal that we need to reach through this program. You're going to follow along with that worksheet like Beth and I just talked about to further refine those ideas and flush them out a little bit more. And if you do have difficulty in your group coming to kind of a general consensus about what those top 3 ideas are. You can do a poll individually asking, you know, what are your top 2, what are your top 3, and go through the people in your group if you need to do it that way. Sometimes groups just kind of come to a general consensus. Yeah, we want to do that one. We want to do that one. Sometimes they have a little bit more difficulty. So if you do have more difficulty, send a message to Kelsey and I can come pop into your group and see how I can help. Or Patricia can as well too. We'll give you a 5-minute warning again. And then we're going to come back and we're going to share what each of the groups narrowed things down to. So that's our plan. Does anybody have any questions? All right, have at it. And if you have trouble getting in your group, just like Kelsey, know and she'll help you out. Again. They have pretty big groups, so.
I don't know if it's just me, but I'm not getting any warnings about when we're coming back. So
Oh, you didn't?
I feel bad for my group because we just keep getting cut off in the middle of talking. And Marlis was telling us a great idea about foster grandparents, so I apologize.
Well, we've been trying to send you a 5-minute warning notice, and then you should get a 1-minute warning notice when Kelsey closes it. So not sure what's going on.
Give them an extra 1-minute warning notice just in case.
Yeah, you were just too excited. Missed it.
Where is it? Where is it coming in? Like the chat?
Yeah.
I don't see anything.
Not in the chat. It's a pop.
It pops up on your screen usually.
Oh, I wonder if I have like block-ups.
Oh, well, everyone wants to talk. Well, welcome back, everyone. We have Nancie Deming, who's the core team lead, is joining us from the airport. She made it back to Minneapolis, and so I'm going to give her just a couple minutes while she's waiting for her baggage to introduce herself for anyone who doesn't know her. Go ahead, Nancie.
Thanks, everybody. First of all, I just want to thank all of you for coming out and participating in this. This is a topic that's just so near and dear to my heart, from all different perspectives, from working in a child care center to being an ECFP parent educator, so working with parents and young children who need high quality care. So I'm very excited to see all the momentum that's building up in Cook County and just being able to be a part of that and working with providers to be able to mentor them and help us get going in all the directions that we need to. So I am just extending my sincere gratitude and thanks that you joined us tonight. I apologize I couldn't be there. I was stranded on vacation for a couple of days, but I'm home now. And at the end of our meeting today, Terry's going to share with you my contact information at Sawtooth Mountain Clinic. So if you would like to join some of our 14 groups, be able to flesh out some of these goals and objectives further, we would love to have you. Or if you have other stories that you'd like to share that perhaps we weren't able to get to today, or even other ideas, please reach out to me. I'm happy to give you a call or share an email time that we can talk about it. But I'm here to serve you, to serve all the families in Grand Portage and Cook County. So please use us, use Jody. We're working with the Community Hub, and we just appreciate all of you. Thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Nancie, for taking time to listen in as much as you could. Appreciate it. So it looks like you must have had really good discussions because nobody came back early, we figured. And it looks like the workforce group must have decided to combine and be part of other groups. So we're down to 3 groups, that means. So I'm going to ask Krista with the Community Education and Partnership Group to give us a little brief overview of what you guys discussed.
Sure. So our main idea that we had discussed was larger employers to provide childcare. So when we decided to define what that idea might look like, it was brought up that the childcare center that's at the Y, that the YMCA is a county-owned building already. And so could the county take back over that space since the YMCA is limited on what they can pay and what their benefits are being part of the Duluth YMCA? and it's not enough to retain employees or keep employees. So would it be possible for the county to take back over that building, and then the larger employers combine efforts to provide better wages or benefits, or both? And what does that look like? We didn't come to a certain conclusion, but the idea of like, maybe it's a nonprofit that all the larger employees put into to create that daycare space. Let's see. We talked about some of the larger employers being Cook County, and all of their entities, the school, the hospital, potentially like Bluefin Bay, Lutsen Ski Resort. There was a lot of ideas given of other potential areas that we could go and look at, or speak with them about how it's worked for them. And then some possible action steps would be discussing what that contract looks like between the major employer, the YMCA in Duluth, and the county. And that the first action step might be speaking with the county attorney, Molly Hicken. I hope I said that right. And we would be measuring success by, are we retaining employees? Are we setting milestones and meeting those milestones? And just the ability to provide childcare for any eligible employee that considers working for one of those larger employers, and being able to provide childcare for them. The other idea that we discussed was the training and mentorship for providers, our current providers, and how to sustain and keep them. And we talked about just utilizing our community partnerships like ECFE and giving them space to combine and meet, creating a subpool of subs or volunteers to come in and share responsibility, mental health consultation. And the idea was brought up, maybe high schoolers could be trained to come in and help have some of that shared responsibility and take the pressure off of just one adult providing that care. And then right as we were leaving, Marlis was bringing up the concept of the foster grandparenting that has happened in other communities, and how we could, change to maybe retirees committing to a certain amount of volunteer hours at a child care center.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. The next group is financial supports and incentives. And that one is Beth's group.
Yeah, we had some joiners that added to the conversation, and that was great. It all just keeps coming around to subsidies with this group, because being in this financial kind of world, you can't make money out of nowhere. And so please jump in, anyone, if they can say more, but we have to determine what our gap is between what we can pay for, what our parents can pay for, what our providers can provide, and what we can get in grant funds, and then what we can get subsidized. So it seems like people are thinking the same as we kind of were with having businesses come together, but then there was a thought of what is the most equitable approach, where if you have businesses who are just throwing in, maybe then people who don't work for those businesses, where are they going to get their childcare? Do they get it too? We had also talked about the model that Krista brought up about having a nonprofit in between the businesses and the care that is being provided, and that was thought out. And we thought that bringing 12th graders in, or high school kids, was probably a pretty good idea. And somebody recalled high school kids being in doing that, and it was good. Somebody mentioned the revolving loan fund that the county has, that maybe businesses could use to because if we're going to treat it as a business and the daycare is a business, they can qualify for those loans, and possibly levy grant funds to be able to get some of those loans as well. We talked about who else needs to be included in some of these ideas. And I'm sorry, I'm not going in a linear line, Terry, but
That's okay.
you know, we've got things like the county, the Forest Service, the hospital, we have businesses, we have state agencies, we have federal agencies that provide childcare funding to their employees. So where could some of that funding be channeled to help the most for the most people? And if I forgot anything, I would definitely welcome anyone from the group to stay a little bit. Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks. And the final group is facilities, and Emily is the lead on that one.
All right, our top 3 solutions or potential solutions or ideas. The first one, and I don't know if we really reached consensus on like which was our top idea, but all 3 of these were ideas that we liked. County potentially providing some tax forfeited land, and investors, we didn't specify which investors, but could provide some support to build new facilities. So that would be creating new slots, people that would need to be included, obviously the county, and interested and willing entrepreneur, so Pat Campanero as well, or the EDA, and then Heidi Akins from licensing. Some action steps, you know, county would likely need to create some type of a policy surrounding that land and uses for that land, and you know, what would happen if that person, you know, weren't running a childcare on that land, you know, and then some measures of success, basically just if it were able to open and fill, and then the big measure of success is, you know, how long is it able to remain sustainable. Our top idea 2 talked about just in general, how can we do like a mass expansion of people being willing to do family licensed childcare out of their home, whether it's people doing a very small program like watching 2 families, being a B licensed, which is for like 4 kids, or you know, they don't necessarily have to do it every day. It could be part-time, but just helping grow that interest when we hear that there's people that are watching one family, encouraging them to get licensed so they can watch more than one, potentially having some type of a fund available to help, and maybe that's like a loan program that helps them with any licensing needs that they have initially, and then it can be forgiven after they've been in the field for so long. And just having some mentors in the field. We talked about possibly some sessions at higher ed, whether that be monthly or whatnot, where we can have some working sessions to help people fill out that licensing paperwork and have some pre-made, you know, kits available for like, here's your first aid kit that the licensor is going to want you to have when you start, you know, having some of those things like those basically like daycare startup kits, you know, kind of ready to go, or some options ready to go with some funding that they could use to get started. And then our third idea was kind of similar, but rather than like increase the number of people doing it out of their homes, increase the number of small business owners that want to do a startup family childcare license or center, but mostly we were looking at the family licensed model out of someone else's space. So whether that be, you know, renting a space, for example, like an empty room at the Y that's already designed for childcare, or out of a church, or out of a charter school or something like that, you know. So some action steps would be looking at what different, and especially those businesses that said that they were willing to help, you know, do they have space that they could help with? Would they rent it at a low cost to somebody that would be willing to do a family childcare program but don't have the space in their home to do it? So those were our top 3 ideas.
Very good. Awesome. Well, lots of great ideas. Thank you so much for all of your hard work on this. I'm going to quickly cover our next steps, and then for the last 5 minutes or so, I would like to open it up to any of the parents who are on this call. If you have a story you would like to share about your experiences around childcare as we wrap up for the evening. So next steps We are at the town hall tonight. In about 2 weeks or so, we'll be having a core team meeting to further refine these ideas and flesh them out more so that we have even more detail than you were able to get into tonight. If you are interested in joining the core team and being a part of those further discussions, we would love to have you. And I'm going to put up a slide in just a minute that has Nancie's email address on it. What I'd request, if you'd like to be involved, is that you send Nancie an email so that she can get you onto our contact list. We have not selected a date of our next meeting yet. However, I anticipate we'll do that in the next few days. If you're interested, please send Nancie an email as soon as possible and let her know so she can get you on the list. Once we've refined those ideas, we will create what's called a community solution action plan. And this is basically a written document that talks about all of the process that this core team has gone through so far, outlines that, shares what the need looks like, a lot of the same survey information I shared with you tonight. And then shows the solutions and the action steps to implementing those solutions. That will be put into a long written document and will be housed on our website, which is the ruralchildcare.org website. It will also be given to the core team to distribute across the community as soon as it's ready to go. And then we will continue on with implementation of these project ideas within your community. Once we have that community solution action plan established, Cook County will then will have the opportunity to apply for up to $20,000 in a community grant from First Children's Finance. So that money needs to be used to increase the supply of childcare. So it'll have to go to one of the projects that's adding new slots in the community, but it's going to be a relatively simple application. And it's actually a new program that we've just been able to add this year. We finally have been able to get the Department of Human Services to give us some grant funds to use in the Rural Child Care Innovation Program. So we're excited to be able to offer that for Cook County. Oops, I'm sorry, went the wrong direction there. Here's the slide with contact information for myself, for Patricia, and then Nancie. It's Deming at sawtoothmountainclinic.org is Nancie's email address. Just send her a quick note if you want to be included in all the future core team meetings. And with that, we have about 5 minutes. Oh, let's see, I have a question here. Does the core team move the action plan forward, or who moves the solutions and action steps forward? Yes, the core team and others that they engage within the community who can be of assistance as the projects get fleshed out and action steps develop. So the core team will move that forward. Yes.
And Terry, we have a parent that's volunteered to give.
Awesome.
So Grace, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Thank you.
Kelsey, am I up?
You are.
Okay.
We asked to have a story from a parent, as we were hearing from Beth about how that can be so impactful for all of us. We were hoping to hear from you.
I'm happy to share my story. So I have 2 children. They're both in childcare in Cook County right now. One of them is 2 and one of them is 5. So he'll be moving on to kindergarten next year. But I've personally experienced the struggles of childcare in Cook County. So I had my older in a home-based program that closed last May, and it was extremely stressful to try to, literally I called all the other providers within that first half hour of knowing that the program was shutting down. Miraculously, I did find a program, and soon after, my other son, who at the time had just moved into the toddler room at the Y, that program closed right after I decided to move both my children to Cooperation Station. So it was very stressful. It's very stressful to have a childcare center where your kids are going shut down, because your kids have relationships with those providers. They're like your family. They're taking care of your kids when you're not there. So having them at Cooperation Station, I joined the board because I wanted to make sure that the organization thrived and that I wouldn't personally have to go through that experience of having a childcare program shut down. So I joined the board, and we did have 2 fantastic providers move on to other employments. All the providers I've had firsthand experience with have been fantastic. I can't speak highly enough of them and the work they do for kids in the community. But with both of them moving on, the board has really had to step up overall, and that board is parents. So we're a nonprofit cooperative that is largely run by parents. So we've had lots of late night, evening, weekend meetings, and really tried to pull together as a community of parents to keep the doors open. And that has, I mean, it's been fantastic to see the effort, but it's also involved people. Myself, I trained in as a substitute provider. So I last weekend became licensed as a family childcare substitute, and been taking occasionally PTO from my paid work to go and help out at the daycare, because it's really important to me. It's important to me to do everything I can to make sure that our organization stays open and can support families. And there's so many other parents who are a part of that organization that have been doing the same, just going above and beyond to try to keep the doors open. And well, I'm really grateful to be a part of that group. And we have thankfully managed to find some really qualified candidates to bring into our organization and bring into our community. It's been incredibly stressful to just when you know that your childcare is not stable. It's the biggest stressor that you can imagine, because suddenly you don't know how you're going to go to work. You're worried for just the day-to-day, like who's going to watch your kids? You can't work and care for 2 kids at the same time. I've tried it. It doesn't work. It's just incredibly stressful. So I'm happy to be here tonight. I just have so much respect for our childcare providers, and I'm happy that the community is coming together to try to find a way to make things better for them, and then for all the families and the kiddos that they serve in the community. So thank you.
Thanks, Grace. That's that's an amazing story, and thank you for stepping up and helping out during the rough times. I'm sure that all the families at Cooperation Station are grateful. I did see one other question that I want to answer here. Let me see. Rhonda, is First Children's Finance part of the core team, and for how long will you be involved? So First Children's Finance is facilitating this process. And this is usually an 18-month to 2-year process, depending upon how quickly things move along in the community. We will be involved throughout that time. As the projects are identified and the core team starts to get more involved in the work of implementing the ideas, the core team lead then takes over more of the facilitation of the general core team leaders, core team meetings, excuse me, and First Children's Finance becomes more available to support the startup of any new businesses or expansion of existing businesses, or to support existing providers on anything related to the business side of childcare. So we can help them look for funding. We can help them, figure out what their financials look like. Where's that kind of sweet spot between enrollment, tuition prices? Where do they need to be to break even or, make a slight profit, so that they have some money in their rainy day fund for when things aren't so great. And that becomes more of our role at that point. But we stay involved throughout the 2 years, and at the end of that session, we'll have, or at the end of that time frame, we'll have a celebration where the community can celebrate their accomplishments and be recognized for those. So I hope that helps explain it a little bit better for you. Does anybody have any other questions? It's 9:02, and I know that we're all tired. It's been a long day.
I just want to remind everybody that this is recorded. And that we will be putting this on our website, but I'm also happy to share the link with you. That way you could share it with your friends and family if you missed a detail and you wanted to be able to pass on some information.
Great. Thank you, Kelsey, for all your assistance tonight with Zoom and all of those things. We appreciate you. And thank you to the core team members for your help with the breakout rooms. And thank you to all of you for being here and sharing your ideas and being involved in this work. So with that, we'll say good night, and we hope to see you soon to be engaged in this work further.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Terry.